welcome Pastor as he comes to bring the word.
Welcome to the Sheep Shed. Glad you chose to be with us today. I love this story. I've told it before. I'm going to tell it again because I want to hear it. 3 Buddhist monks were having a problem over all of this carrying on over this Easter and resurrection, trying to figure out what made it so special. One of them said, well, it happened in wintertime. It's cold. Everybody goes out and gets a tree, brings it in, decorates the tree, and everybody gives each other presents. The other monk said, no, that's not right. One of them said, well, it happened in hot summertime. Everybody has a big get-together. They grill, have barbecue, and then that night they all go watch fireworks, big fireworks. He said, no, that's not right. The other one said, well, it happened in springtime. And a great man, great prophet, wise man, good man, he died. They put him in a hole. 3 days later, he come out of the hole, see his shadow, and go back in the hole. There's just about that much confusion over the resurrection in the body of Christ. Body of Christ is probably a little different. It's like the man that was hiking through the mountains and he fell off a cliff. And he managed to grab hold of a little bush that was growing out of the side of the cliff. And he looked down. It was a long ways down and rocks all over the bottom. He said, no way he could survive a fall. And he started hollering, anybody up there can help me? The voice said, I can help you. He said, who are you? He said, my name is Jesus. How can you help me? I can help you. Let go of the bush. Silence. Is anybody else up there that can help me? We want him to help. We just don't want to do what he told us to do to get the help that we need. The resurrection of Jesus Christ is the greatest, most important message that has ever been preached by me or by anybody else. The message today is good or God. Good or God. The world readily admits that Jesus was a great prophet. He was a good man. He was a wise teacher. But to believe that he was the Son of God, the King of glory, and that one day he's coming back to rule on this earth, the world cannot accept that Jesus. Because if he is God, he has the right to make the laws, to set the rules, and to establish moral standards. Here's the problem. The young man comes running to Jesus. This is found in Mark chapter 10. He comes running to Jesus and he kneels down. Now, he's called the rich young ruler. And he says, good master, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus said, whoa, stop. Why do you call me good? There is none good but God. Now, anybody, get this statement. Anybody who makes the claims that Jesus made about himself, if those claims are true, then he is God. And if they're not true, if the claims that Jesus made about himself are not true, then he is the biggest fraud that ever hit this planet. You can't have it both ways. If you say he's good and not God, then the claims that he made about himself makes him a fraud. So he's certainly not good. And he would definitely not be wise. Have you got the concept yet? The church world has created a fantasy Jesus who was not, in order to avoid confronting the Jesus who is. Now, the Jesus of Nazareth was a historic figure. Nobody can deny that. He was born, he lived, he was crucified, and he was buried. You can't deny that. That's a matter of fact from history. Now, anybody who says that Jesus was good and wise, a great teacher, must confront certain claims that Jesus made about himself. I'm going to give you 7 things that Jesus said about himself. Now, if these claims are true, he's God. If any one of them is false, he's not good, and therefore he is not God. Number 1, he based all authority in himself. He told the disciples, and he commissioned us as followers of him with this statement: all power, all authority is given to me in heaven and in earth. Go you therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. Now, he made the claim, nobody has the authority to base authority in themselves. Nobody has that right. No human being has that right. But he made that himself the basis of all authority. He said, you have heard it said, but I say, whatever you've heard said, you better believe what I say, because I have all authority. Now, he made that claim about himself, that he has all authority. Number 2, he thought he had the power and the authority to forgive sin. Jesus put forgiveness of sin in himself. He said, I forgive you. Go and sin no more. Now, I made a quick search, and I may have miscounted, but if I am correct, I counted 15 times to 15 different people. Jesus said, I forgive you, or you're forgiven. Go and sin no more. He based forgiveness in himself. Now, some people, some denominations have taken the verse where Jesus said, whosoever sins you remit, they are remitted unto them. But whosoever sins you retain, they are retained. Now, some priests have had the impression then that they had the power to forgive sin. Nobody but God has the authority to forgive sin. In fact, it was carried so far that priests sold indulgences. Do you know what that means? That means if you wanted to sin, you wanted to have an affair, you wanted to go commit adultery, you go to the priest and say, I'm going to have an affair, I'm going to commit adultery. What's it going to cost me for you to forgive me? And they would pay an indulgence. It's called granting an indulgence, or paying an indulgence. When he said, whosoever sins you remit, you can forgive me. You can choose to forgive me. When you do, that sin is forgiven. You have forgiven it. But you also have the right not to forgive. And if you do not forgive, then that sin is retained in you. So forgiveness is important. Being able to remit sin is something you have to do yourself. Okay, I'm going to get off of that. Number 3, Jesus thought he was perfect. That's unusual. The rich young ruler said, good master, what must I do to inherit eternal life? He said, whoa, stop. Let's establish something before we carry this conversation any farther. Do you know who you're talking to? I mean, I'm not just some good rabbi teacher. They're a dime a dozen in their own self-proclaimed goodness. That's not who I am. Do you know who you're talking to? You're going to call me good? There is none good but God. So you're asking me as good, does that mean you accept me as God? Now, when he said that, Jesus two things. He either did not think he was good, or he thought he was God. Why do you call me good? There's none good but God. So did he think he was not good, or did he think he was God? You're going to grasp this. You'll catch it at the end, I guarantee you. It will lighten you up. Why do you call me good? Only God can be good. So make up your mind, young man. If I am good, then I'm God. Now, the rich young ruler could not accept that. Because if he's good, if he's just a good teacher, then he knows he does not have to obey whatever he says. But if he's God, then he's obligated to obey what he tells him. So Jesus is establishing coming out the gate. Do you know who you're talking to? Don't call me good unless you're willing to accept the fact that I'm also God. He made these claims about himself. He thought he was perfect. I challenge anybody to find anywhere any sense of sin or failure or moral inadequacy in Jesus. Let me give you an example. The disciples came to Jesus and said, Lord, teach us how to pray. He said, when you pray, our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our sin, our debts, our trespasses, as we forgive those that sin and trespass against us. Now, Jesus never prayed that prayer. That was not the Lord's Prayer. That's our prayer. That's how we are to pray. He never prayed that prayer. To pray that prayer is to have a sense of sin, failure, and inadequacy. He did not pray that. That's how we pray. The Lord's Prayer is John 17, where he puts himself as one with the Father. He said, I and my Father are one. He said, I came to do the will of my Father. And if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. When Jesus is teaching on the law and nailing the Pharisee hypocrites to the wall by pointing out that God looks on the heart and the thought is as bad as the deed. And then he says, you've heard it said, thou shalt not commit adultery, but I say, I'm changing that. If you look on a woman to lust after her, you've already committed adultery in your heart. Now then he said, Jesus thought he was perfect. He had the audacity to say, don't think that I came to destroy the law. I came to fulfill it. I came to show you what the fulfilled, perfect law is. I'm perfect. I have never broken one of my Father's laws. How would you like for me to stand up here and say I'm perfect? I wouldn't get out the gate with that one. You know me too well. If you stood up and told me you was perfect, I'd call you what you are. And then we'd both be in trouble. He thought he was perfect. The greatest sin of all is to be conscious of none. Jesus was conscious of none. He was either God or he was perfect. Number 4, Jesus thought he had the right to judge others. Now, he told us, judge not that you be not judged, because when you judge others, you're guilty yourself. So, Jesus did not hesitate to judge the Pharisees, the hypocrites. You know what he said? He said, you hypocrites, you whited sepulchres, you look good on the outside, but inside you're full of dead men's bones and all uncleanliness. He said, you hypocrites, you stand in the door of heaven, you won't get in, you won't let anybody else in. He said, you hypocrites, you strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. That's quite a feat. He said, you hypocrites, you've got a tree trunk in your eye and looking for a grain of sand in somebody else's eye. He judged them. When everybody wants to stone the woman taken in adultery, Jesus said, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. The world wants a good and wise Jesus, but they will not accept him as the ruler of the universe, the God and the boss of heaven and earth. Now, if Jesus is good and wise, he's God. If he's not God, how can he be good and wise? Are you okay? Everybody take a deep breath, or we're going to wind down. Number 5. This one blew me out. Jesus talks about eternity from personal experience. He said, before Abraham was, I was. Right. What? That makes you about 2,000 years old, Jesus. I thought you was only 30. And then he had the audacity to say, I also saw Satan as lightning fall from heaven. Whoa. That makes you over 4,000 years old, Jesus. I mean, that was before Adam, when Satan fell from heaven. He talked about eternity as though he experienced it firsthand. Number 6, he made himself the only sacrifice for sin. He said, I'm going to give my blood. This was at the Lord's Supper, Last Supper. He took the cup. He said, this is my blood, which is shed for the remission of sin. Amen. He made himself the only forgiveness and the only sacrifice for sin. And number 7, Jesus made himself the center of the religious universe. Jesus never preached an ethic apart from himself. He preached himself. I would never preach myself. Jesus said, if I be lifted up, I'll draw all men to me. He preached himself, and he made how you deal with him and how you relate to him the key and the only way to heaven. He said, I am the door. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. If by me you enter in, you will be saved. He preached himself, and he said, no man can come to the Father but by me. Jesus had to believe all of these things that he said about himself. He had to believe that all authority was based in him. He had to believe that he was perfect, that he knew eternity from personal experience. He had to believe that he was the only sacrifice for sin. He had to believe that eternal life depended on you making him the Lord and Master of your life. Now, he had to believe all those things. No mortal can make those claims. Now, if he is good and not God, then he's nuttier than a fruitcake. He was making claims, and if he was wise, he had to know the claims that he was making was a lie. So, if he was good and wise and not God, he was the biggest fraud that ever hit this planet. And he certainly could not be good, and he could not be wise. if he was not God, and make these claims about himself. Have you got a grip on that? Most of the church world has never taken 30 minutes. Now, I have been almost 30 minutes giving you a good, solid look at who Jesus was. Most of the church world has never taken 30 minutes to really look at the evidence about Jesus. What has happened in the church world? The church world has made an emotional response towards a fantasy Jesus that does not exist the way they think he is. They make an emotional response, and that's why people get saved on an emotion. And that's why there is so little strength and power and commitment and character and integrity and faithfulness, and that's why there is so little stability in the church world today. That's why the message of the resurrection of Jesus Christ is so important. Because if Jesus is who he claimed to be, and you can be convinced of that in your heart and in your mind, then you acknowledge he's not just good and wise, although he is good and wise, but the only way he can be good and wise is because he is God. If you can take that hard look at who he is, the evidence of who he is, then you have the ability to make a decision about Jesus Christ. And if he comes to me, and I can prove these claims, he comes to me and he says, Mack, if you will make me the Lord of your life, I will give you eternal life. Then I know at that point I am willing to stake my life, my reputation, my future, and my eternal destiny on who he is. Now, here's the real kick. This is the clincher for me. Jesus made all of these claims about himself. And then he said, I'm going to give my life as a sacrifice for all sin, for those who will accept me. They're going to crucify me, bury me, put me in a tomb, and 3 days later, I'm coming out of that grave. Wow! The fact that he came out of that grave, that made the disciples willing to give their life for who he was. That's what made me and my commitment to him, where I would say, I believe that. I'll give you my life. I'll give you my future. I'll give you everything that I am. And in return, I expect you to give me eternal life. And there ain't no grave going to hold this body down. It's not just the resurrection. It's the fact that he made all of those claims about himself and then came out of that tomb. Christianity stands or falls on what the Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians 15, verses 12 through 17, when he said, well, let's start at verse 14. If Christ be not risen, then our preaching is vain, and your faith is also vain. And we are found false witnesses, because we testified of God that he raised up Christ. And if he raised him not up, then Christ, if the dead will not rise. For if the dead rise not, then is Christ not raised? If he walked out of that grave, I'm a walking too. And he said, if Christ be not raised, your faith is vain, and you are yet in your sins. That's why he not only made those claims, but he came out of that grave. That's why the message of the resurrection is so powerful. And that's why I want your faith fixed and based on something solid, not just an emotional response to a Jesus that you really know nothing about. I want you to know about him. Christianity. If what Jesus said was true, you need to take a hard look at making him the Lord of your life. Christianity is not an emotional response that many people think it is. Christianity is a hard-headed, cold turkey decision about Jesus Christ. Has nothing to do with emotion. You may cry, you may laugh, you may jump, you may shout. I don't know what you'll do. Or you may just stand there stiff as a board. Yes, I believe that Jesus Christ died for my sins, that he was buried, and that God raised him from the dead. And I receive him as my Savior. That's it. That's what he said. If you believe in your heart and confess with your mouth that God raised Jesus from the dead, thou shalt be saved. For whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be saved. You have to believe it, you have to confess it, and you have to ask him. That's it. Emotion's got nothing to do with it. It's hard-headed, cold turkey decision. I'll tell you what I want to do. I'm going to do something I have never done before. I want every one of you here. I don't care how saved you are, and I don't care how lost you are. If you are ready to make him Lord of your life, right where you sit, I want you to say this: I believe in my heart that God raised Jesus from the dead. I'm making a hard-headed, cold turkey decision to make him the Lord of my life. I am asking you now, forgive my sin and save me in Jesus' name. Now, I don't care how saved you were or how saved you thought you were. I don't care if you've never been inside the door of a church and know nothing. You don't have a clue what I just said. If you did what I told you to do, there ain't no grave going to hold this body down.